Hello everyone, this is day 14 of the 30 Days of New Year challenge, and I really want to thank everyone who's been watching and getting involved over the past fortnight. It's been really helpful. Some people have been giving me good feedback, some people have just been genuinely supportive and going keep it up, and I'm really thankful to everyone who has subscribed, to everyone who has watched, and everyone who has liked and commented. I decided that I would expand in this video on one of the topics of my last video, which was music, and today is my top 15 albums of all time. 15 seems like a weird number. 20's too many, 10's not enough, and 15's a nice round number. These are ordered in chronological order based on when they were released. I agonized for how I would organise the list. But the easiest way I thought would be to do by release date, and that's kind of worked weirdly. It's sort of looking at things, how they were released over time, has painted an unusually accurate picture of my musical development. So here it is, the top 15 albums of all time ever according to Linchpin. So the earliest release on this list is Led Zeppelin 3, which was released in 1970. It's my favourite Led Zeppelin album. I talk to a lot of other Zepp fans and they think that Zepp 3 is a funny decision. It is eclectic in its styles. It has a bit of rock, it has a bit of folk, it has a bit of, like the early onset heavy metal stuff. You have this, the Immigrant Song, for example, but it's my personal favourite. I really like the folky stuff on it, and I like the harder stuff too. If I had to choose another Zeppelin album to go here, it would probably be Physical Graffiti. For me, it's their most metal. Second on the list is Nursery Crime by Genesis, which was released in 1971. Nursery Crime goes on here for me because it's the Genesis album that the proggy Genesis that I like the most. It's their third album. I think Peter Gabriel is super cool. I really appreciate a lot of his solo career stuff as well. And for me, Genesis without Peter Gabriel just wasn't the same. If I were to choose another Genesis album to go here, it would probably be Foxtrot. Next on the list is The Rise and Fall of Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars by David Bowie, which was released in 1972. 1972, yes. The reason I like this album in particular is because when I was a little girl, I'd sit on my dad's lap and he put albums on the LP player, and this was one in particular that just sticks in my mind because I remember thinking the album cover was really cool, and I just loved sort of the space kind of theme of the whole album. And so I think that was sort of the start of my musical development and my everlasting and undying love for David Bowie. Next on the list we have Moving Pictures by Rush, released in 1981. I saw Rush in Dublin in 2011. 2011. It was a time machine tour anyway. It was the first and last time they played in Dublin, and it was an incredible show. But the thing that I liked the most about it was they played Moving Pictures in its entirety, from Tom Sawyer to Vital Signs. They played the whole thing in one go. And my oldest brother and I, we had barged our way up to the barrier. Geddy Lee was literally about 15 foot in front of us, like he was there. And, they played the last, bit of Vital Signs, and the crowd went mental. Myself and my brother were chanting at Geddy Lee going, "Play it again, play it again, play it again." And he just turns around to us and goes, "No." And just goes on to the next song. It was just like... Next is The Circus by Erasure, released in 1987. Erasure was one of the sounds of my childhood, particularly this album. Andy Bell has a great voice. I don't care what anyone says. I know people find him kind of screechy and annoying, but I really like him. The Innocents, which was their next album, was also absolutely brilliant. If I just was given the two of them today and I listened to the two of them as if I'd never heard them before and I enjoyed them, it would be very difficult for me to choose which one was better. But because the Circus has a sort of childhood nostalgia thing for me, that is why it's on the list and not The Innocents. And also, in a range we have Vince Clarke, not just Andy Bell. We have Vince Clarke, who was one of the founding members of Depeche Mode, which brings me to my next album on the list, which is Violator by Depeche Mode, released in 1990. This was really difficult. I knew Depeche Mode had to be on here because they're one of my all-time favourite bands of all time, and I think they're very influential. I remember getting a compilation of Depeche Mode tributes, and on it was Smashing Pumpkins, My Chemical Romance, Rammstein. There was a few people on it who, you know, I could see how much the music of Depeche Mode had influenced a lot of music, the other bands that I listened to as well. You know, there's an awful lot of just angst and Weltschmerz involved in a lot of Depeche Mode stuff that I really relate to. But then again, I did have a massive emo face, so it makes sense. It was really difficult to choose a Depeche Mode album to go on here, because I really like Violator, Music for the Masses, Black Celebration, and Some Great Reward, and some of Songs of Faith and Devotion. But Violator for me is sort of the most concise Depeche Mode sound. It's the cleanest, it's the most polished, it's them just being solid musicians and performers. Some Great Reward would be my second choice. Next on the list we have an unusual one. A lot of people would be surprised if they knew this was one of my favourite albums. Dreamland by Robert Miles, which was released in 1996. Quintessential 90s trance music. It's just, oh, it's so of its time. It couldn't have been made at any other point in history. It was just so of its time. But the reason it's on here is because it's the first album that I ever bought. It's the first album I didn't buy it. My dad bought it for me, technically. I remember hearing the singles of it, 101 and Children, on Top 30 Hits. I remember playing it as a kid. My brother, Paddy, who you saw in the video yesterday, oh god, he hated it. He couldn't listen to it. He said it just creeped him out. It just made him feel so wrong on the inside. He just couldn't listen to it. I don't know if his opinion on it has softened much since then, to be honest. Now into what people might recognise as my general musical tastes. We have Volume 3, The Subliminal Verses by Slipknot, released in 2004. When I first was getting into heavy metal, I had a friend who had got into it slightly before me. At that point, the hardest thing I was listening to was Evanescence. You know, I wouldn't really call Evanescence hard now, but at the time it was so dark and disturbing, and I wore corsets and flowy dresses and wanted to be like Amy Lee. But then I asked my friend who was into metal so for some recommendations, and I ordered them off Amazon, and two arrived before the other. The first two I got were Ascendancy by Trivium and The Poison by Bullet from a Valentine. And then, a few days later in the post came Subliminal Verses. It was just what I needed. It was just so full of emotion, energy, anger. It just hit me. And I think that was sort of the starting point of the metal that I'd end up listening to. And that brings me on to the next one on the list, which is 10,000 Days by Tool, released in 2006. It is very heavy and very hopeless, and I can't listen to it too frequently because it puts me in such a dour, place. I do like Anima as well. Anima's a really good Tool album. I think I like 10,000 Days because it reflects on the hopelessness of mankind. How we do things that are bad and we just really don't care about it. My throat's getting a bit dry. I'm just gonna... That's better. Next on the list is, still in the mid-noughties, we have Dear Agony by Breaking Benjamin, released in 2009. Standard rock music, 4 chords mostly, catchy enough sort of melodies, and that's why I like them, is because you can sing along to all of their music. I was introduced to Breaking Benjamin by a guy that I knew when I was in school. We were in a band together. He was the singer, I was the drummer. I was an awful drummer. We only played one song. But I remember listening to it and thinking, like, I heard I Will Not Bow, Diary of Jane, Dear Agony, and I'm thinking like, oh, this is just really good quality, like rocky, ballady stuff. We're taking a slight step away from the hard rock and metal into drum and bass with this offering, which is Immersion by Pendulum, released in 2010. I didn't know about Pendulum until I was in art college. I had known about The Prodigy when I was in school. Now, I have a very good friend that I met in art college, and she and I just had like such compatible tastes in music. She introduced me to Pendulum. She was listening to Immersion in the car, which at this point was the new Pendulum album, and they haven't released anything since, actually. They are back together, and I'm super excited, but they haven't released any other albums since. I remember just listening to it in the car and being like, yes! It's so like dance, 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 but also it is very musical, and you can listen to it by itself as an album, as a collection of songs and musical pieces. Back to metal for a bit, or metalcore, we have What Separates Me From You by A Day to Remember, released in 2011. This one was difficult. Homesick, What Separates Me From You, and Common Courtesy are all fabulous. There isn't a song on them that I don't like. They're all just marvellously well constructed, super catchy albums. And I remember seeing A Day to Remember live at Download in 2013, and they were just great party boys, do you know? The crowd was electric. They were just having a really good time on stage. They encouraged us to do crowd surfing, which was just hilarious. I didn't really like their most recent one. Oh god, I can't even remember what it's called now. I listened to it once and I was just like, no, it's not for me. But What Separates Me From You is on here is because it's the first one I heard, and it really sort of caught my attention. Again, with the sort of metalcore thing, we have We Do What We Want by Emory, which was released in 2011 as well. I think that Emory are just woefully underrated. I listen to it and I think, like, why don't more people know about this band? They're just marvellous. And, you know, for me, I doubly like them because they have a Christian edge on their music, but it's not in your face. It's not like really extremely Christian. It's sort of, they reflect on the world in a Christian way using the music, and that really strikes me. But this is on my list because it's just, again, good, solid, catchy metalcore, and the songs on it, I can sing along with them all. I know all the words. They're just great lyricists, they write great melodies, and it's one of those albums that I go to when I'm feeling down. And then the last one on the list, whoa, before we get to number one, I realised I forgot one. I was editing this video and I was like, oh, I missed out the second last album on my list. So, the second last album on my list is Shrines by Purity Ring, released in 2012. I remember the first time I heard Lofty Cries, which was the leading single off that album, I was just bathed in a sort of mystical, ambient, moody trance, and I really enjoyed it. And I got the full album when it was released, and there's not a single song in it that I'd skip. It's just solid, consistent music for the whole thing. I don't like their most recent album, which sounds just like a bad Church's tribute, but I am comforted in the knowledge that their first album was just marvellous, and I can always listen to that whenever I want a bit of Purity Ring. And then the last one on the list, which was the most recent acquisition, released in 2015, we have The Minesweep by Enter Shikari. It would be remiss for me not to mention that Enter Shikari is in my top 5 artists of all time. I was introduced to Enter Shikari by the Scuzz TV channel. I heard Anything Could Happen in the Next Half Hour on Scuzz, and I remember thinking, oh my god, this is awesome. And I've not stopped listening to that album since. Until they released their most recent album, The Spark. But anyway, Minesweep. When I first got it, I listened to it twice a day for about 9 months. I'm not lying. So yeah, those are my top 15 albums. Let me know what you think. If you agree, disagree, leave comments. If you want to share with me what your top 15 is, that would be great. Or even top 10. And if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more, please subscribe. And if you want to follow me on Twitter, follow me at linchpinirl. And until I see you all tomorrow, take care everyone.